Hi guys, my name is Nick Braunton and I'm a Randomfish. If you're a Randomfish too, hit that subscribe button, like this video, all that good stuff, and let's be random together and go fishing together, shall we? Hey. So, God, that intro was bizarre. Anyway, one of the things that I'm trying to do is I'm trying to come up with other ideas, something else for me to do on this channel besides just talking about movies and games and everything else. Now, the last video I posted was a Star Wars rant, which I just needed to get out of my system. I would apologise for it, but I feel like I needed to make this point. Simply for no other reason than to sort of bash all the haters out there of Last Jedi. Just purely for that reason. But that's out of my system now. And the video before that, when I reviewed Yoga Hosers, I did speak about something that I wanted to talk about involving Yu-Gi-Oh! For those of you who don't know, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a trading card game that was originated in Japan, or at least the anime was, and the manga was, out in Japan, where there was a boy named Yugi who put together an ancient 5,000-year-old puzzle. And when he did so, his body ended up being shared by his own soul and the soul of a 5,000-year-old pharaoh called Atem. Spoilers, by the way. The entire first run of the show, the first incarnation of the show, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, focuses around those two characters primarily, and their struggle to discover Atem's memories, what he used to be as Pharaoh, and everything else under the sun. Over the years, other versions of Yu-Gi-Oh! Have surfaced, Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, 5D, Zexal, a whole host of various versions, and it's all been created in the card game, the actual card game that is available. You can buy them, you can buy the cards, you can trade the cards, you can battle with the cards, you can do duels and all that sort of thing. And, you know, at cons there's people dressed up as these characters, they're running around doing their thing. It's brilliant. And it's a wonderful thing to get into when you're a child. But, however, one of the things that I wanted to look at was, this was something else that I don't feel like overly a lot of people touch on within the show. They talk about the cards, they talk about the plot lines being ridiculous and all this sort of thing. One of the things people seem to not always talk about, they do talk about it, but they don't always talk about it, are the villains of the show. The villains of the 5 series of the original incarnation of Yu-Gi-Oh! Are interesting, to say the least. They're very much, many of them are sort of misunderstood characters, drawn apart from the good path by an evil force of some kind. Actually, it's most of them that are driven by that, and by that path. With the exception of possibly one, maybe 2, I'm not entirely sure. But there are 8 villains over the course of the 5 seasons. If you haven't watched the show, I do recommend watching the show first before watching this video. If you're watching this video and you haven't seen the show, what are you doing? Just go and watch the show. Okay? Don't be silly. Moving on. The 8 villains over the course of the show, I'm now going to try and rank, in my own personal opinion, which ones I think are the better ones, which ones I think are the worst ones, blah blah blah. And we're going to start with the worst first, and then move up to the best at number 1. 8th is a version of Alexander the Great. In Season 5 of Yu-Gi-Oh! There's a section called Capsule Monsters, where the main characters, Yugi and Atem, obviously sharing the same body, Joey, Taya, and Tristan. The 4 of them are teleported to another world, basically. They're trapped in a world where you don't play dual monsters, but you have the dual monsters, but you have them in capsules on this giant thing on your arm, where you can fire capsules and bring them to life, and they fight other monsters, and you have to complete certain quests in order to get to the end of the game, as it were, and then you have to fight another team, which is what happens. And over the course of the season, Yugi and the others, they gain all sorts of things. Yugi has something that's an armor that you can then combine with certain monsters certain capsule monsters that he has. When he does that, he gets an armor, a very specific armor. You have like the Dark Magician armor, the Magician of Black Chaos armor, the Blackluster Soldier armor, a whole bunch of really cool things. One of the bigger ones for me I noticed was that Alexander the Great, or the rehash of Alexander the Great, if you will, is a villain that we don't know a heck of a lot about in the brief time that we have that storyline. It's a very brief story, not one that I overly enjoy looking at. It's a very bizarre, very short-lived villain. He doesn't do much. His motives are mostly left unclear until the very end, when it just expositionally just throws it all at you for no reason. And it's not very well. I just don't think it's very well done. I just don't think his motive is made very clear. I just don't like him as a villain. I think he's one of the slower villains. A lot of them in the bottom 3 of this list are just going to be really bad villains that I just do not like at all. Number 7 on that list is Siegfried. Again, season 5. The first half of this series is like the capsule monsters of the second half of the first half, but the first half, the very beginning of the series. Seto Kaiba, the frenemy of Yugi, if you will. If you don't know what a frenemy is, you're not a millennial or anything after a millennial. Shut up. But the thing is, within that sort of thought process, within everything else, Seto Kaiba sets up a tournament, and there's a bunch of duelists that all have to take part, and whoever wins, whoever gets like the last one left standing, is granted the opportunity to duel and try and defeat Yugi in a one-on-one duel. Siegfried is the main villain of the whole thing. He doesn't feel much like a villain. He doesn't, again, his story seems, whereas with the Alexandra clone, you didn't really understand his story, didn't really feel like it grasped me all that much. This is how bad a villain that guy was. I don't even remember his name, much less, his bloody backstory. It seemed really bad to me. But Siegfried is not all that much higher. I mean, yes, his motives are clear. He wants to destroy Kaiba and his company that he's built from the ashes, basically. Kaiba Corp, as it's called. And he wants to try and bring the whole thing down. And he does so by means of a virus that he installed in a card, and all this reprogramming of holograms and all that, and all this really weird stuff. And a lot of it, if you were a kid, it would go right over you. Now, I know where a lot of people go with this, because of course Season 5 is one of the only seasons in the whole of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Run, of the first run, that is rated 12. And it's not rated PG like the rest of it. If you're in America, I apologise. I'm working from the British system. Shut up. And I understand that, for something like that, it's a little bit more sophisticated. It's not going to be as accessible to the younger kids. But I'm sorry, there's some very dark stuff going on in the other seasons as well. They could have all been 12s, and this one could have been a 15 for all I cared. But it was brilliantly fun to watch. But his motivation is so... Whereas the previous villain's motives were unclear, this guy seemed to make it a bit too complicated, a little too ridiculous. He didn't feel like... He felt like he wanted to have an overcomplicated plan that seemed dangerously simplified when you really thought about it. In other words, he is having a temper tantrum because he thinks Seto stole a design from him, so he's going to destroy his company, and he's going to use all sorts of tricks in order to get it. But again, he feels like a one-note character. He doesn't feel like a complex villain, and that's what you need, especially in an anime that is based on such a simple premise. And I mean, the other villains, they were simple in a lot of ways, but they had complexity to them. They had something that was big to them. This didn't feel complex. This didn't feel like complexity. This felt like a very simple villain that you just could not like from the get-go. Again, all my own opinion. If you disagree with me, feel free to do so in the comments. But from my own perspective, at the very least, I like a villain who's complex. I like a villain that I can look at and go, oh wow, I did not see that coming from that character. I did not see... Oh, that's lovely. I like that. I like twists and turns within a character. I enjoy these things. I always have. I always will. I think what really aggravated me about Siegfried was his complete simplistic plan attempted to make more grand and more theatrical than it needed to be. His accent also didn't help me. I couldn't take him seriously with the accent for some reason. I just don't know why. For those of you who've watched the English dubbed anime, please help me out here. I don't think his accent makes him that great a villain. I don't. I don't think he sounds like a decent villain. I think he sounds like a comedic villain you find on Batman 66. You know, it's just the way that he sounds. I don't know why, it just irks me. Anyway, moving on. We've done number 8, and we've done number 7. Number 6, Darts. This is a very close one for me. Darts and the villain I'm going to pick for number 5. Very, very, very interesting to me. Darts was a villain who, again, didn't really feel like he was the villain of the show. Again, season 4, this is, of the show, it was a complete derailment of the plot. The plot line, as we'd followed from the 3 seasons at the very end of the 3rd season, was that the Pharaoh and Yugi had won all 3 of what's called the Egyptian God cards: Slifer the Sky Dragon, Obelisk the Tormentor, and the Winged Dragon of Ra. These 3 cards, combined with the Millennium Puzzle, would activate the Pharaoh's power. When used in front of a tablet, this would then give him his answers to his questions and give him access back to his memories and all of that. And all of his problems would eventually be over. Season 4 kind of just goes, nope, and takes a giant axe to that entire plot line and completely severs it. And the whole season is trying to retie that knot and failing miserably at it. A lot of Yu-Gi-Oh fans don't like Season 4. I know why. We all know why. It's complete derailment. It seems ridiculous. It seems pointless. And it is pointless. But Darts, again, Siegfried felt like a one-note villain. Darts felt like a very anticlimactic villain. Whereas with Siegfried, I didn't care whether or not he survived. The same thing with Alexandra Clone. With Darts, I just didn't care. I didn't care about him. I didn't care about his means or his motivations. His cronies, the biker dudes, you know, 3 guys and another character from the show that you get more prominently in seasons 1 and 2, My Valentine is her name. Between those 4 characters, that was complexity. That was intrigue into these characters, and they were really good, but they weren't the main antagonists of the series. They were the cronies. They were the guys that you could defeat in 1 or 2 episodes, maybe. You know, an elongated duel that would last over 2 seasons, and most of it would be about 50% talking. You know, 1 episode would just be entirely talking for no reason. And that's what you wanted. That's what you liked. That's what I liked sort of hearing about. It was a character that sort of took a little bit longer to use, to create. I liked it. Darts' duel in the show itself lasts over 4, maybe 5 episodes. Out of those 4 to 5 episodes, I didn't want him. I wanted the real villain. The real villain, if you haven't seen the show, if you haven't seen the episodes, is the seal of Orichalcos, or the meteor that contained the stones of Orichalcos. The Orichalcos is essentially a sentient meteorite, some kind of mystical power that landed on the mystical land of Atlantis. Atlantis exists in the Yu-Gi-Oh universe. Deal with it. It crash lands on Atlantis and it starts infecting people, starts turning them evil because the stones are enhancing your dark side. Darts ends up getting one of these things and starts having this quote-unquote realization that humanity is evil, and therefore it needs to be wiped out so civilization can be rebuilt and Atlantis can be reborn. The Orichalcos keeps him alive over all these years, for some reason. He gains a whole bunch of disciples, including, you know, involving those biker guys and 2 other characters from the 1st season, and the 2nd actually. Weevil Underwood and Rex Raptor, 2 very comedic style duelists who suddenly became proper villains for some bizarre reason, even though they lasted all of 2 seconds in the actual show. It's weird. But Darts didn't feel like the villain. The Orichalcos was the villain in the whole thing. It's like the Ring of Power in Lord of the Rings. Sauron may be the ultimate bad guy, the guy that created it, but he, again, isn't physically seen. The ring is the thing that you must fear. The ring is what needs to be destroyed. The ring is the main quote-unquote antagonist of the trilogy. You know, like it or lump it, that's just the way it is for that entire trilogy. And the same thing is true with that season of Yu-Gi-Oh! Darts just didn't feel like a villain to me. He's not lower on the list simply because I liked the way that he the only good thing that I can really think about with this guy is literally because he was so caught up with this concept, and you could just feel his manipulation. The Orichalcos has manipulated him into thinking, but his own manipulation of all these other characters is really fun to watch, and you can see them all saying the same things about how they don't want to be weak, how they're fed up of being losers, how they want to actually do something that benefits the world, and how the universe is evil and needs to be sort of taught a lesson. And it's just wonderful to see manipulation on that kind of level. I've forgotten someone, actually. I really have. It's really stupid of me. I'm not going to redo the video and put this guy in his rightful place. I'm simply going to point out that Darts is no longer number 6. He is number 5. Number 6 is Noah. Noah is he is the whiny, supposedly younger, possibly brother of Seto Kaiba, or adopted brother of Seto. Seto Kaiba is adopted, and Seto Kaiba and his brother Mokuba are adopted by a guy named Gozaburo Kaiba. Gozaburo had a son called Noah who was in an accident. His brain was then digitized for some reason, because Gozaburo wanted to keep his intellect intact, I'm guessing. And Gozaburo suddenly becomes obsessed with Seto, ends up wanting to try and make Seto his heir, and not put Noah's brain into Seto's body as it had been originally planned. And Noah grows up resentful of Seto and of Gozaburo, and ends up creating this entire virtual reality for himself. Again, he's a whiny, pathetic character. He is annoying as hell. I do not like him. I do not like him at all. He is such a whiny character. And the only reason why I placed him at number 6 instead of number 8, like I would have done with the others, he's not that forgettable because he's a digital being. He not only orchestrated this entire thing of a bunch of digitized angry guys to all fight Seto Kaiba. This is all happening in season 3, by the way. The reasoning behind why he's further up on the list than the other two is simply because he's a digital little boy who's had years and years of anguish and pain thrown at him by all these angry people, and he's just become this conniving, manipulative little bitch who sort of turns up and, sets off these 5 goons to take down the team, including Kaiba in this instance. There's no removal of him in this. And also there's 2 other characters being involved, but I can't be bothered to name them. But he's cool enough. He's a cool enough villain, and he actually ends up defeating one of the main characters, loses to the other character, but only because he's the main protagonist of the show, that being Yugi and Atem. But it's so cool to see a character who actually tried to do something, and who actually seemed legitimately on the same level as one of the other characters. He didn't seem like he was trying to be in control. He didn't seem like he was trying to do something. He seemed like he was already doing it and was simply bragging about it. But he's just not, to me, he's not a great villain, because he's such a whiny little kid at the end of the day. I just cannot take him seriously. I cannot take whiny little bitch villains seriously. I just can't. I can't do it. There's a sad backstory to be sure, but it doesn't make me go, oh, it just makes you go, oh, fuck you. Just fuck you. So, like I said, that's number 6 now. Number 5 is Darts. Number 4 is Maximilian Pegasus. Pegasus, for those of you who would know, is the main antagonist of Season 1. He then becomes a quote-unquote good guy throughout the other seasons. Pegasus' whole shtick during Season 1 was to try and resurrect his wife through means of controlling the Millennium Eye, which he already controlled, which he found in Egypt when he went travelling there after his wife's untimely death. He ends up discovering that more Millennium items equals the power to bring people back from the dead, quite possibly. And he attempts to control Seto Kaiba's company, Kaiba Corp, and use more Millennium items' power to bring Cecilia back completely. That is his goal. I don't like that explanation of his character. It doesn't feel very right. But he is pretty cool to sort of watch. He is a lot of fun to watch. He just is. The reason why he's number 4 on this list is simply because Pegasus, apart from his little breakdown and his little whingy backstory about how Cecilia died and how he was all upset and alone and blah blah blah, his entire attitude throughout most of the show was one of going, I've already won, you're just playing my game now, ha, screw you. He felt like a genuine mastermind of a villain, and less of a, I'm trying to conquer the world. He's just sitting there going, I'm literally on the cusp of conquering everything that I want to conquer. You are just a gnat in my way. You are barely anything. You're barely worth my time as it is. When he got defeated and you got his sob story, it didn't feel very connective to the character. It just didn't feel all that way connected. I don't know why. It just didn't to me. It kind of disconnected the character from me. Apparently in the original anime, in the original Japanese dub, his story is a lot darker, and I like the idea of that. Again, he becomes a good guy further on down, because of course the Millennium Eye, it didn't have an influence over him as you would expect it to have. He is a good person underneath everything. He is a good person underneath his anger and underneath his guilt and his loss and his grief. And I think he dealt with that during a lot of time where he was sort of taken out of commission at the end of the first season. Who was he taken out of commission by? You'll find out eventually. So he's number 4. Pegasus, not the best villain due to the sub-story, but his entire run up until that point, he was brilliant. He felt like a genuine mastermind of, like the psychic that sits there and goes, I know this is happening. It's almost a bit like the Emperor in Star Wars, except he's not quite there. He's not quite along the lines of big hood and walking, beside someone going, everything is proceeding as I have foreseen. Not quite that level. Close, not quite. Anyway, moving on. 3. Marek Ishtar from Season 2. Marek Ishtar is the son of a tomb keeper. His sister, Ishizu, is also that. And Marek is set to become the next tomb keeper. He then gets pissy about this and wonders why he has to dedicate his entire life to some sort of nameless pharaoh. Because that's what they're doing. They're looking after the pharaoh's tomb. And essentially, they're looking after Atem's tomb until he comes back. Until he's able to return and go on into the next life properly. He gets pissy about it, decides the pharaoh might never return. If so, why can't he be pharaoh? And he goes to steal the 3 Egyptian gods, which, as I said before in Season 4, those in the Millennium Puzzle equals activating the pharaoh's power, which gains him access to all of his memories. So Marek thinks that if he gets the 3 Egyptian god gods, as well as the Millennium Puzzle, it will give him the power of the pharaoh and grant him the power to finally get respect and to go out into the world and actually do things in life. His backstory is a lot more, slightly more sympathetic, in that you understand where he came from with all of this, in that he's never been allowed to go outside. It's not, I had a nice life and then it was all taken from me. This is literally, I have been in the sand my entire... Anakin Skywalker would hate this guy. Marek has lived in the sand, lived underground in a tomb his entire life. He knows nothing but deserts and tombs and death. That was his entire life. He wanted to go out into the real world to experience the real world. His father completely hates the idea, forbids him from ever leaving the place, and Marek ends up getting really upset about it. And his father, as far as he's aware, gets killed by some grave robbers. He decides, screw it. Why should he have to wait around for someone who, by all intentions, may never come back? And then even when the pharaoh does return in the form of Atem and Yugi, Marek still doesn't care. Because he believes what he's doing is right, and he believes what he's doing is the correct path. He doesn't relish in his evil like Pegasus. He's not guided by some misfortunate hell like Darts was. he legitimately believes this is the right course. He's done this of his own free will. This is not something that he's failed to do. You know, and season 2, by all accounts, was one of the better seasons because it took the funny out of season 1, but put a much darker backtone to it in season 2 for the seasons, which was really cool. The only thing, again, the only reason why Marek would ever lose any respect for me on the heroes in the villain scale is still the same thing as Noah. Whiny kid. I sympathise with him totally, but at the end of the day, he's a whiny child who didn't get what he wanted from Daddy. Is it really any wonder why you know, you have a responsibility, dumbass. You're doing this, yeah, idiot. You know, but that's 3. Number 2, you may like this, you may not like this. I've split them up into 2 because they go over 2 different seasons. Dark Marek, or Yummy Marek, if you will. Near the end of season 2, there's a whole shtick about how Marek's bodyguard, Odeon, poses as Marek with a fake Millennium Rod and the whole shebang, and even a fake version of the Winged Dragon of Ra, to prove that he is able to control, in order to sort of prove his worth to Marek and to prove that he's a part of the Ishtar family, as he was adopted by the Ishtars, as it's revealed in flashbacks and all that sort of thing. But when he plays the fake version of Ra, the real Winged Dragon of Ra gets really pissy. Literally, the card has the spirit of the Winged Dragon of Ra living inside it. Like when they're created, when the Egyptian gods are created, they're created with such power and such prestige that the gods themselves actually live in these cards. Those creatures live in those cards as spirits. There's no denying it. So when Odeon plays the fake Winged Dragon of Ra, the real Ra gets pissed about it and starts screwing around, and even to the point of striking Odeon with lightning, and of course Joey Wheeler, who's in the duel against him, gets struck by lightning as well. When Joey gets up, he automatically wins the duel because Odeon is knocked out and therefore forfeits. But you see his fake Millennium Rod get shattered, and there's all sorts of things happening, and Marek ends up in so much pain and so much anguish that his dark side ends up taking the forefront, not the background, not whispering in his ear, actually he's at the front talking. Marek gets banished to the furthest corners of his mind, even gets so far as to be kicked out, his own soul gets kicked out of his body, and Dark Marek, or Yummy Marek, becomes the main antagonist at the second half of Season 3, when they return to Battle City after the whole virtual thing with Noah. Like I said, see point 6. But Dark Marek is so much more fun than normal Marek. Dark Marek is essentially a complete psychopath. He doesn't want to just rule the world. He wants to banish Atem to the Shadow Realm permanently, and talks about torture and all these other things and all these really insanely glorious things that he's just so happy about it, and he relishes in the darkness. He relishes in the Shadow Realm. There's a point where he creates different games for his different opponents. That one of the episodes when he's fighting against Joey Wheeler in the semi-finals, I think it is, of the tournament of Battle City, he has their two duel discs. He's linked them up psychically, their life points psychically, to them and to their monster. So when their monster gets destroyed, it feels like a bit of their soul is being demolished. There's another point where, you know, the more life points you lose, the more your memories go. And the more you forget about your friends and your family and everyone. And this happens to Mai at the end of Season 2. And in Season 3, when he finally faces off against Atem and Yugi, what does he do? He takes the weak half of him, aka Normal Marek, and takes Normal Yugi away from Atem, and he straps them both up, and the more life points each player loses, the more of that person, or, you know, either Yugi or good Marek, is sent to the Shadow Realm. I mean, that's pretty sadistic. And it's brilliantly fun to watch him because he's so happy about it, and he's so relishing it. And it makes you want to slap him, but it also makes you sit there and think to yourself, oh my god, if only, you know, if only the other villains had been this joyful in what they were, this might have been, you know, this guy is a saving grace of the show, he really is. But he's not, again, he's a bit too over the top. He does feel like, he feels like Ian McDiarmid in Revenge of the Sith. I almost expect him to turn around at one point and just go, no, no, you will die. You know, you feel like he's going to become that, but he's not. But he, you know, there's this thing in anime where they stretch out the faces, or they give like little marks, or like the little tears when they're being embarrassed or whatever. But his face gets stretched out in these weird angles, and it feels really like he's distorted almost. And it's quite creepy to watch, but it's fun. He's a fun character to watch, but at the end of the day, he just doesn't... For me, he's just not the ultimate villain. He's close, but he's not. That goes to my number one spot. And for those of you who've been watching the video all the way from the beginning, and you've watched the show, you know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Bakura. Yami Bakura. He starts off as a bit guy. He literally turns up for one episode, maybe 2 episodes, and then more later on. But the only duel he ever had, he has one duel in the whole of the first season, where he gets supposedly kicked out to the graveyard because he did this whole thing about separating souls from bodies and putting them into the cards and blah, 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 blah. He has the Millennium Ring, which is, again, one of the Millennium items, and it holds a thief's spirit, supposedly, inside it. In Season 1, he is supposedly beaten by Yugi quite quickly, and then when he's dueling against Pegasus, when Yugi duels against Pegasus, the spirit comes back and helps Tristan find a new body. Find Mokuba's body, because Mokuba's soul's been taken by Pegasus. Long story, part of the show. But Bakura wants Mokuba's body for his own. Tristan then thinks he gets rid of the Millennium Ring by knocking out the evil Bakura and throws the Millennium Ring away. The Millennium Ring is still there, it still comes back to Bakura and to Yami Bakura, who then goes up and proceeds to defeat Pegasus in a one-on-one Shadow Realm match with their 2 Millennium items, using what he's called the landscape of our mind, which I think is quite a cool phrase. But he takes Pegasus' Millennium Eye, he takes the Millennium Eye, he takes it and he says, you know, he wants all 7 Millennium items. In Season 2, he goes out to try and trick Marek into giving him the Millennium Rod. And he can only do this by defeating Yugi and taking his Millennium Puzzle and giving it to Marek. That's fine, Bakura thinks. Yami Bakura thinks, because if he does that, then he gets the Millennium Ring, he can take Marek's soul away and then take the Millennium Puzzle back for himself. It's pretty easy. Bakura then gets sent to the Shadow Realm at the end of Season 2, where you think he's now gone, where you think the evil spirit is now gone for good. In Series 5, and at the beginning of Series 2, if you're watching hard enough, you'll notice he put a piece of his soul into the Millennium Puzzle, and then when Yugi holds up the 3 Egyptian gods to the tablet and has the Millennium Puzzle, and he goes to find his memories, aka gets sent back to ancient Egypt, where all the Millennium items were originally forged. Yes, they did that in Season 5, and it's really cool. But Yami Bakura has somehow escaped the Shadow Realm, retakes possession of Bakura, goes to the past with Yugi, and his self that was in the puzzle is still running around inside the puzzle. There's 2 versions of him running around, and it's just this he plays the really long game, and it all comes to a crux where it's discovered that the Bakura that we know, the dark Bakura that we've had in the entire show, is not just the thief. It's not just a thief. He's the embodiment of the original Shadow Realm creator, Zork. This gigantic beast of a monster that can only be defeated by Atem saying his name. Something so simple. He's so conniving, so deliciously evil. He takes such a pride in it. And he's so ready to just attack and destroy people. And he leaves them with no other choice but to feel defeated and just destroyed. He manipulates people into sort of becoming this incredibly dark force. Bakura sort of becomes this guy where you know that he's so evil. Like, there's a point where in the beginning of this storyline in Season 5, you see Bakura, normal Bakura, running in the rain, and you hear Yami Bakura's voice talking to him, telling him that he has to stop, he has to surrender, that he's gonna take back control. And he ends up in a church, and there's a beautifully done shot of Bakura screaming in agony, clutching his head, screaming in agony. He holds up he starts screaming. The windows shatter in this cathedral. The Millennium Ring appears. Like, the Millennium Ring doesn't appear or anything, but the Dark Bakura takes back control, and you don't see him again until you see him talking to Rex and Weevil, who have stolen all the Millennium items from Yu-Gi, including the 3 Egyptian God cards, because that's what they're after, and they're running, and they're running, and they're running, and they try and find the Egyptian God cards. Bakura steps out of the shadows, takes the Millennium Ring back, sends them both to the Shadow Realm, gives all the Millennium items back to Yu-Gi, and just says, you know what, the last game is happening, and you're gonna have so much fun playing it. And it's just, his evilness just is so infectious, and it's so deliciously done, that you honestly, you want to punch this guy in the face, but at the same time you feel yourself slightly rooting for him, because of how much passion and how much backing he's put into this. It could just be because he has a British accent. I don't know, that's just the way I'm viewing him. But in all honesty, when you get to the end of this video, we're at the end of the video now, I'm simply going to say, watch the first run of Yu-Gi-Oh! Watch Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, watch all 5 seasons. You will not be disappointed. It's brilliantly done. And I do honestly believe that this show gave us some very good villains. Even the ones that I don't like as much, I still would watch. Even though I can't really stand them. They're still good. They're still funny to me. In one way, shape or form. But honestly, you've watched the show. If you haven't, then you must. Watch the show, draw your own conclusions. You know, write in the comments below who your favourite Yu-Gi-Oh! Villains are. I know for a fact that someone I know on Facebook thinks Pegasus is his favourite. That's fine. But, you know, write it in the comments. Like this video, subscribe. I did something different. I'm going to try other different things. Let's find out. Next week is going to be me talking about the Discworld games. Because I have played them before. There's a person who made a comment in my Summon the Sorcerer video about me playing the Discworld games. I have played them. I remember how they're played and everything else. It's brilliant. But my next video will be about that, okay? So hopefully you can stick around and watch that. But in the meantime, Randomfish out.